Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. The White Door. The White Door. It's been locked since the day we moved in. No one can find the key anywhere. Nobody has a clue if and what it leads to if they could access it. It's a locked door with no key, and it sits in the middle of our bedroom wall in the room I share with my younger sister, Chloe. It's a strange, plain white door with the number 13 written on the top of it, also in white. It merges in completely with our white wall. Even the door handle is white, making it blend in so well. It's almost invisible, and most people completely miss it. When one of us that can see it point it out to them, they appear perplexed. It seems only a few of us are able to see it. I could have said, it's like a picture of a door painted onto the wall itself. But on closer inspection, it is slightly indented, and the white handle sticks out a little from the wall in a 3D effect. Chloe, along with my parents, claim not to be able to see it, and that I'm making it up in my imagination. But my older brother Felix claims to have not only seen it, but opened it when we first moved here. You opened it? Yeah, once on my 13th birthday, a couple of years ago. What did it lead to? And what did you do with the key? It didn't lead to anything. Flory, just the inside of a brick wall, and there was no key. It was unlocked already. Then how did it get locked? I don't know, Flory. Maybe Mum or Dad locked it? You can hardly blame them. What's the point of having a doorway to the inside of a brick wall? There wasn't even a corridor or secret passageway. I'd forget about it if I were you. It's completely pointless. Probably someone's idea of a laugh or something. You know, to catch nosy people like us out. Why would Mum and Dad lock it and pretend they couldn't see it? I thought to myself. The mystery of the door growing deeper in my mind. Don't get me wrong, Felix's discovery on opening it did make total sense. After all, the wall it was a part of was one of the two outside walls of our room. The one next to it was the window wall, as we like to call it. But like Felix said, why on earth would you want to have a door that led to the bricks of your house? Surely the builders would have just put a complete wall there, like all the other rooms. It also didn't explain the jingly musical sound and singing voices that came from behind the area of the door on a night, or the light that shone underneath it, lighting up the darkness. I'm pretty sure I've also heard other voices from behind it, too. Nothing spooky, sounding just happy and giggly, almost like there are children on the other side of the door playing. It gives out a nice vibe when I hear them, leaving a smile on my face. Flory, earth to Flory, you're daydreaming again. Sorry, Chloe. What was you wanting? Mom asked what you want for dinner. The options are spag bowl or chicken curry and rice. Ugh, neither. I'm not even hungry. Whichever you want, Chloe. You are gonna eat it though, right, Flo? My little sister questioned me suspiciously. Sure, maybe. I don't know. I'm still full from lunch. I might just grab a salad. Yeah, tell Mum I'll get myself a salad. I quite fancy that. Chloe looked unconvinced, but left the room to let Mum know anyway. A while later, Mum came and tapped on the bedroom door. Flory, can I come in? Sure. I've made you up a chicken salad, like you asked for. But I have to say, I'm getting worried about you. You're not eating properly. Though I understand salads are a good choice, you also need to be eating other things. Mom, you don't need to worry. I'm okay. I'm just not fancying the same food I did before. And salad is a healthy choice, especially as you added the chicken. Well, okay, I'd like you to come and eat it with me. I'm having one too. We need to sort your birthday party out. I don't think your guests will want salad as their only choice of food, do you? I don't know. A salad birthday cake sounds healthy to me. I giggled, the reply, something I hadn't done for a while. This made her smile as we both went to the dining room to eat. The chicken salad was good, and I agreed to have a chocolate cake for my birthday party. I didn't really have the heart to tell her that I didn't want a birthday party, and no one would come anyway. She seemed more excited about my birthday than I did. A week later, my birthday was finally here. And while my parents and sister were busy putting the decorations up, I called Felix over. There was something I wanted to know from him. As we went to my bedroom, I could already hear the children's voices again. They seemed to be singing something, but I couldn't tell what. Do you hear that? Hear what, Flory? The singing? It's coming from behind the door. Not really, but it does look a bit different. Look, the 13 is standing out 3D like the handle. It was like that when we moved in before I opened it. It's your 13th birthday. Flory, it can't be a coincidence, can it? He put his ear up against the door to try and hear the voices. Looking back at me, he suddenly gulped and said, Flory, you're right. There is someone on the other side of the door. They're calling for you, but I thought you said it was just bricks behind there. It is. Well, it was when I opened it. I slowly creeped over to where he was at the door. What should I do, Felix? I don't know. Maybe you should try and open it? I don't have the key, remember? Neither did I. When I opened it, remember? I just grabbed the handle and pulled it down. Give it a try. What do you have to lose? Okay, but please hold my other hand. I don't want to do this alone. You don't have to, Flory. I'm right here with you. Okay, here goes, ready. I grabbed Felix's hand and pulled down the handle. The door swung open. Sure enough, it looked like nothing was there but a brick wall. Then I heard it too. Flory, help me, Flory. I had no choice but to risk hitting the brick wall as I stepped inside the doorway. Just in front of me was a winding downward staircase made of stone steps. I looked behind me and saw my room again. But who was calling me? And how did they know it was me? I made a decision. I was going to go down the staircase and find out who it was. I turned back again to see the door closing. Wait, no, don't close it. I thought you was coming with me. I am with you, Flory, once on this side. The door closes until it's time to return to your party. Quick, let's go. Felix made his way down the staircase and out of sight before I could have a chance to think. How did he know that? He said it was only a brick wall. Had he actually stepped inside and been here before? Felix, wait. Flory, we help Flory. There it was again. I'm coming, I replied, and started descending the stone staircase slowly, as I wasn't sure it wouldn't make me slip. I hoped Felix was all right. He had practically ran down them. Felix, are you still there? Hello? No response. Even the other voice had gone quiet. As I got lower, I could hear a dripping sound begin. It started slowly and sounded like a long drip each time until it eventually sped up into a drip, 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 drip. By this point, the stone stairway was also damp and starting to become completely waterlogged at my feet. I wasn't sure I could actually go down any further when the voice started calling again. Flory, help Flory. It was sounding more desperate. I'm nearly there. Where are you? Just as I went to take a step down into the water, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Not that way, Flory. You'll drown if you go that way. Follow me this way. Felix, why didn't you go slower and stay with me? I knew you'd find me, Flory. Come on, give me your hand and step up onto this ledge on the right. I had been so focused on not slipping down the stairs, I hadn't bothered to look around me. I grabbed Felix's hand again as he helped me up onto the ledge. I paused to look around us. We seemed to be in a cave. The walls were solid stone. Looking up, I could see stars glinting above. At least they looked like stars. But unless it was a dormant volcano or other cave with an outside view, they were probably not stars. Maybe we were in a diamond or crystal cave, seeing them glinting above. Or maybe that was the dripping water droplets. Either way, it was so beautiful. I felt my breath catch in my chest at the sight. The water I had almost stepped into appeared to have a fast current, and I was glad Felix had been there to guide me to the ledge. Where to now? I asked eagerly. Follow me. It's this way. The ledge wasn't very wide and was a little slippery, but we got there slowly. When we reached the end of the ledge, Felix lifted me down, pointing in the direction we were going to next. It was very bright, almost blinding. I lifted my arm to shield my eyes as I looked towards what I guessed was the sunny outside. I wasn't far wrong. We stepped out into a beautiful summer's day. There were flowers, trees, lovely green blades of grass with a beautiful silver water fountain in the middle. Swings on the trees, a pool. Children were playing happily, skipping, dancing, and singing around. Some were making daisy chains, while others were making buttercup chains. The lyrical sound of birds chirping and singing. The whole place gave me a peaceful feeling, just like a happy dream. Only this was a real place I'd come to from my bedroom, down the stone staircase into a summer's garden. So I had heard children laughing and singing through the white door. Yes, you had, Felix replied, almost secretively. Why don't you come and meet some of my friends? He beckoned me to follow him again. Your friends? But you said there was nothing but a brick wall behind that door. How can you have friends here already? He glanced at me with a comical expression on his face that said, seriously? You need to ask? But all he said was, follow me, you will see. I stepped onto the grass with him and started following as we got to the silver water fountain. I heard the voice again. Flory, please, Mom. Dad, Flory, help. I glanced into the fountain and saw Chloe in tears and me on my bed. She was shaking me, crying, looking helpless. Mum and Dad rushed into the room. Suddenly, my breath caught again in my chest. I could feel the pressure as Dad pumped 119-223, and Mum was breathing into my mouth in between. I felt the warm breeze flow down my throat into my lungs. The white door appeared on my left. Felix was still on my right. The fountain still in front of me. Felix, what's going on? You have to choose Flory. Come with me and meet my friends this way, or go back through the white door to Chloe and our parents. Choose Flory before it's too late. But I don't understand. Felix, what about you? I'm always with you, Flory. Stay with me now, or go back to Chloe before the door stays closed. Without another thought, I bolted towards the white door, my heart beating hard in my ears. I jumped through it into my bedroom and onto my bed, turning to see the door slowly closing, with Felix still behind it, smiling and waving goodbye. Felix, I cried out, bolting upright on my bed. Flory, Flory, you died. Flory, you wasn't breathing. I couldn't help. I'm so glad you came back. I couldn't bear to lose you too. Chloe sobbed. I held her in my arms, soothing her as she stained my top with tears. Mum and Dad looked like they had seen a ghost, their faces as white as the door that used to be on my wall, but had completely disappeared as it had closed, taking Felix with it. Did you shout out Felix when you came back, honey? Was you with Felix when you were gone? Is heaven real? My mom seemed to have a million questions. Don't be silly. Dear, Felix died on their birthday 2 years ago. He drowned in Glitter's Cove. He can't have been with her. Once you're gone, you're gone. Isn't that right, Flory? I wasn't sure what to tell my dad, or who to answer first, so I decided to answer them both at once. I don't know about heaven, Mom, but there seems to be a peaceful, happy place. And yes, Felix was with me. Dad, Felix is always with me. I'm his twin, remember? The N, a price to pay. I should have known better. As cliché as it sounds, nothing in life is ever free. It all started with my dream trip. We were bouncing down the streets in the French Quarter to the tune of live horns blaring and drums pounding, forcing this mystical string of rhythm that shivered up from my toes to my hips. I had over-elaborated in mixed spirits with colors of red, orange, and green, doused in crushed ice. I had saved up an entire year for 3 whole days of fun. The ultimate girl trip. Now here I was, trapped in this padded room, all by my lonesome. It's better this way for everyone, at least in my opinion. Now back to how I got here. I digress. I promise it will make sense later on. Anyways, we were partying with all the other thrill seekers. The weather was perfect. I mean, it was hot, but that's what you want in July in New Orleans. Hot, humid, and rainless. Everybody was spreading Southern love. Gold, silver, purple, and green beaded necklaces rained down like candy from a kid's piñata. It didn't matter if you raised your top or not. The love for tourists was overflowing. The street vendors were making their rounds as well, so quick and elegant, with the words that rolled off their tongue. It was like they were singing you a nighttime lullaby, weaving a spell of sweet nothings and joy. Little did I know, that is exactly what they were doing. I have never thought of myself as an overly superstitious person. I say overly because I did avoid having my feet swept and never opened an umbrella in a building or house. Outside of that, a black cat was just a black cat. I didn't believe in witches, shamans, witch doctors, or black magic. I understood the undertones of voodooism in the bayous of Louisiana. I took a mythology class during my undergraduate studies. I even did a research paper on it. I knew a good story when I heard one. And that is exactly what they were. Stories. I digress. My attention was drawn to a street vendor that had his face painted in gold. He had on a jester hat decorated in colors of purple and silver. He had on a purple blazer with purple dress pants to match. His feet were nestled into pointed green boots trimmed with white. He had multiple beaded necklaces going down his left arm and was shooting confetti out of a wooden pipe that resembled some type of flute or oboe. I made my way closer to capture a video. The vibes from that one was something magical. It was 90 degrees, and he wasn't sweating. That should have been my first clue. Something was off. People were passing by, pointing and laughing. I got closer, but still was far enough away that I looked as if I was just a part of the crowd celebrating on Bourbon Street. He placed the pipe down on a little box as an elderly couple stopped to admire his painted face and outfit. He tried to hand the woman the necklaces on his arm, and her husband, I assume, shook his head no. The guy was like 6 feet tall, but did the daintiest curtsy I had ever seen, and I couldn't contain my giggle. Neither could the couple, and the man accepted the beads. When the couple tried to give the beads back to the court jester, he shook his head no and put his hands up to signal 20 on. The husband tried to give them back again. The jester took 3 of the beaded necklaces back and then put up one hand to now signal Pash as the total. His wife laughed beside him. I mean, I get the humor. What better place to get swindled than the streets of New Orleans, baby? Memories to keep for a lifetime. He gave the hustler the money, and then they bounced down the street. I had recorded the entire scene on my phone, and when I looked up, we had made eye contact. I felt almost locked in his trance. The beginning of my demise. I looked down at the stupid, tarnished rose gold ring with the blue opal stone that was now trapped on my finger. Sorry, there I go again, jumping around the story. Again, we locked eyes. I was more than a little tipsy and had the audacity to wink and giggle. He put his confetti flute back to his mouth and blew in my direction. He wasn't going to hustle me, and that was for sure. I know how it works. The group I was with shifted, and somehow we got closer to him and his show. This time when he blew, confetti made it onto my shirt. He had a cheering audience now. The air smelled of booze, sweat, and cigarette smoke, mingled with hints of too strong cologne here and there. But that did nothing to deter the crowd. He presented a new sleeve of beaded necklaces in multiple colors. The flute pipe went back to the box. People were so drunk that they were totally fine with paying primes for necklaces you could get from the nearest dollar store. But not me. They were being thrown from balconies for free. I couldn't hide the skepticism from my eyes. I loved the camaraderie, but no scams will empty my pockets this day. He locked his eyes with mine again, and then moved towards me. This time, he grabbed my hand and twirled me around in a circle to the beat of the live music that was playing in the streets. My cheeks were aching from smiling so hard, but I was not going to fall for his swindle. My friends were cheering me on in the background, happy that I was finally letting my hair down. I was a little dizzy from the alcohol and the spinning. The jester then enclosed my hand in both of his, and when he pulled back, there was a ring on my finger. I don't know how he did it, but I wasn't paying for it. "Take it back!" I screamed over the music and noisy patrons. He shook his head no and put up his hand to indicate $25. I laughed and repeated myself. He changed it to $15. His light brown eyes seemed amused by my defiance to be swayed to part with my hard-earned money for a ring I could have gotten from a bubblegum machine. To be honest, I had already been hustled when I went to the marketplace the day before and paid $75 for an ugly dress because I was sold a dream. He went down to $10, and he almost had me until a lady behind me said that she would buy it for $25. I tried to take it off my finger to give it back, but he stopped me and gave me a huge smile. His teeth were about the prettiest I had ever seen, complementing his gold-painted skin. He really looked like he was out of a painting. He had a broad nose, and he had a set of long lashes that any woman would be jealous of. A handsome fellow, he definitely was. Again, not a bead of sweat, and his skin was flawless. He nodded, and then pressed his lips to the back of my ringed hand before shaking his head at the woman, and spoke. "This here trinket is for the one who doubts the ways of the bayou. She has been chosen," and then gave her a beaded necklace instead. I felt a flush of heat go over my entire body. The accent made it sound so poetic. Everyone continued to cheer him on until all the necklaces were gone. And then that was that. Or so I thought. He turned back to me and winked. As we all dispersed, my party and I made our way down to the end of Bourbon Street. And when it was time to go back up, I tried to take the ring off my finger to give it back, but I couldn't get it off. In theory, the good things, when we came back to his area of business, he was gone. Little did I realize then that he meant what he said when I was chosen. All that was left in his spot was an empty box and pieces of confetti that littered where he once stood. No matter how many times I replayed it in my mind, I still can't figure out the pivotal moment when I chose my fate. Or better yet, my fate was chosen for me. Why me? No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get this stupid ring to come off. At the time, I thought it was all of the salty food and alcohol I consumed on the trip. But when we made it back home, it was still glued to my ring finger. Of all the fingers he could have put it on, it had to be the one that indicated I was taken out of the marital market. Like I said before, I have never been an overly superstitious person. My beliefs are my beliefs. When the first dream hit me, I thought it was just a coincidence. I had a dream that I was drowning. The golden man with the perfect teeth was looking down at me from a black boat, smiling. Instead of beaded necklaces on his arm, he was holding a funeral wreath with a name I recognized on it. The odds, right? Or at least, that is what I thought, until 3 months later, the person actually passed away in a boating accident. The dreams continued. Vivid nightmares of people I know perishing to the other side. Every dream turned into some kind of forewarning of what was to come. Always him, always a new funeral wreath, always the smile. The creep worked some kind of black magic on me when he gave me his ring. I tried telling my friends and family that we were entertained the Grim Reaper himself, and he was punishing me with these visions because I wouldn't fall for his con. Everything has a price, even entertainment. I didn't even know I was giving up anything. I guess I got swindled after all. The group that went with me had no recollection of the gold-painted man with a jester hat on his head. What they did remember is me getting into a rather large argument with a stranger about the origins of voodoo, and screaming that the natives of New Orleans' beliefs are based loosely on fairy tales, and that I apparently offended a lot of people. Even if that was the case, no one could tell me how the ring came to be on my finger. The video that I thought I had recorded when he was hustling the elderly couple had disappeared from my phone. The first professional I saw for the prophetic dreams told me I worked too hard, and maybe I needed to take some time off and stay away from alcohol. They had me complete all these different tests to prove that I was in my right mental state. In the midst of it, no one could get this stupid ring off my finger. By the time I got to the fight professional, I was told that maybe I should just keep my intrusive thoughts to myself. And death was a part of life, and try to live in a normal manner. I see death. I don't want to see it, but I still was able to see it all the same. I was cursed by a New Orleans jester, all because of the difference of opinions. If only I could go back, I would have definitely said no to that first drink and kept a clear head the entire, instead of being doomed to a room of padded walls because everyone thinks I lost my mind. Here I was, safe. But let's go back to the beginning. Paranoia. It was a cold November evening. Rain was showering on the street, creating a constant background noise. People ran from cover to cover, and residents of the building gathered near the window, admiring the incredible scenery outside. Except for Carl. Carl spent what seemed like an eternity examining his mug. His favorite mug, the mug he had for several years. Yet there was something strange with it. Using something for a long time, you remember small things about it. Little cracks, stains, tiny pieces of something edible that was stuck near the handle. It was there, but something was wrong. Just like if someone bought a brand new mug and, "Hey, Carl, are you all right?" Jesus Christ. Carl got frightened and turned around, convulsively trying to control his hands and not to break anything. The mysterious voice belonged to his friend, Conrad, who stood in his kitchen with an anxious expression and a bottle of wine. Yes, I'm all right. It's just... Wait. How did you get into my apartment? You gave me the spare keys, remember? Conrad put the bottle on a table and proceeded with the conversation. Are you sure you are all right? You look really concerned about something. I mean, people in your profession always look concerned, but today, it's a bit too much. What's going on? Yeah, no, it's nothing serious. Carl got 2 wine glasses in the kitchen and proceeded to sit at the table while trying to express his concerns. It's just my mug. It doesn't look right. Your mug? Conrad was visibly surprised. The one you have from college? The only thing that's not right about it is that I remember you holding your mug more than holding your ex-wife. I mean, that's why we got divorced. Carl laughed. Not because of the mug, obviously, but you get the point. Carl realized he had forgotten about a wine opener and went to the kitchen to get it, while continuing his speech. The point is, it's not like it should be. It's hard to explain. Something is not right. Maybe it's a little cleaner than usual, but something else is off too. That happens to mugs when they get cleaned, Conrad said, trying to play it as a joke, but looking really concerned. Are you saying what I think you are saying? The room was silent for a moment. Carl was deep into his thoughts and unsure if he wanted to discuss it. But there is no better person to share his fears than Conrad. I mean, Carl began hesitantly. You know the country we live in, with all the secret police and repressions and all this stuff. What if they are spying on me? You are right about a country we live in. Conrad ate an olive and continued. And you know much better than I do about all the people that fell into paranoia and lost themselves in madness. No one was watching them, and no one is watching you, Carl. You just forgot that you washed the mug. Don't do this to yourself. Yeah, I guess you are right. I'm seriously, Carl. Don't do this to yourself. This country already lost too many good men to paranoia. We cannot lose you too. You are right, and I really mean it. Carl and Conrad smiled at each other and started the dinner. While you age, you tend to lose your friends. Not because something is wrong with you or with them, at least mostly, but because life drives you apart. You begin to work. They begin to work. You start a family. They start a family. Suddenly, you don't see each other anymore. You hardly know what is happening in each other's lives. And all your conversations are mostly wishing each other a Merry Christmas. That was not the case for Carl and Conrad. They were there for each other for as long as they can remember. They finished school together, lived together through college, and helped each other in all ways possible. Conrad was there when Carl got married and divorced. Even when they started to drift apart, they made a deal to gather every 2 weeks to drink some wine and catch up on what was going on in their lives. Carl knew he could trust Conrad and didn't lie when he said he would abandon all that spy paranoia. At least, he thought that. Soon after Conrad left, Carl poured himself some tea in the mug, the one that almost drove him crazy, went to his cabinet, and opened some documents he was working on. He opened a file, took a sip of tea, and wanted to start the work, but he still hesitated. He could not stop staring at the mug. Obviously, Conrad was right. The mug was the same as always. But Carl could not stop thinking that someone bought a new mug and tried to recreate the original one with cracks and stains. Was it paranoia? Certainly. But Carl knew one thing. He must do something to find out, or his mind will never be at peace again. That night, Carl put away his documents, finished the tea, and went to sleep. The following day, he bought a camera and hid it in the cabinet. If someone was there spying on him, they would return to the apartment. Days passed, and Carl sat in his cabinet each evening and watched videotapes from his camera. Nothing. Day after day, week after week. He did not tell Conrad anything about it, so as to not disappoint his friend. He knew that it was not healthy to do something like that to yourself, but he couldn't stop. He promised to monitor it for a month or a month and a half, and then stop. It was almost the deadline, if not counting the ones Carl already moved to later. He understood that he slowly lost control over his paranoia, and knew that it must come to an end. One more time. That's it. Carl committed to watching the very last tape from this camera, and there was nothing. Again. But something was off. Carl replayed the tape again and noticed what was bothering him. The timestamp skipped 3 seconds once. It may have been just a manufacturer error or problems with the power supply, but Carl still wanted to check for something. If he was right, someone might have erased part of the tape. In that case, they knew where the camera was because they saw how Carl hid it. He took his flashlight and tested it against his camera. Light reflected on the lenses and created small flares. If he was being watched, his apartment must contain other cameras. Carl knew that he was too deep into his paranoia, but could not resist himself. After all, if he found out he was right, that's not paranoia. He started flashing his apartment, inch by inch. He couldn't find anything until he saw a flare in a bookshelf. He put his hands on the shelf and tried to find what caused this flare. His hands touched something, and his heart skipped a beat. There was another camera. He rushed to his desk to watch the tape on a newly found camera. His hands shook, and his mind could not focus on a single thought. He finally had proof that he was right all the time. Nevertheless, it took him much courage to activate the camera. He would have to live with whatever was there for the rest of his life. But he knew that there was no other choice. The tape was on. Carl first noticed a person changing the SD card on a camera. It seemed like a regular procedure, and Carl could not wait to see who this man was. A second later, the villain revealed his face. It was Conrad. Carl could not believe what he saw. Conrad, his best friend, was a secret police officer, and he was spying on Carl. The tape went on as Conrad took Carl's camera and started editing it. This is why there was nothing on the camera before, but it took just one mistake for everything to be revealed. Then Conrad found the documents Carl was working on, took some notes in his textbook, put everything in its place, and left. Carl was shaking. He could not breathe normally and started crying. Conrad. Out of everyone, Conrad, his best friend, the only person he could trust. All these years, everything they went through, all the time they helped each other live through the worst moments of their lives, were now void. Nothing. Just a lie. Carl was heartbroken. He didn't know what to do, and wasn't even sure if he wanted to live anymore. He felt like all his life had been a giant lie. No, it's not how it should end. One thing that jerk was right about is that this country could not lose Carl, too. It was hard and tough, but he had to do something right now. First, Carl scouted the house to find more cameras. There was one in the bedroom and one in the living room. Now, it's time for action. Two can play this game, and Conrad just lost a huge advantage. Now Carl knows he is being watched. First, Carl edited the footage from the found cameras. Now he knew exactly where they were, and how to hide what should not be found. He didn't want to look too suspicious, though. Sometimes he left some clues, usually useless, so that he would not be detected. As for Conrad, Carl made sure he did not suspect anything. As hard as it was, the two continued their tradition of gathering every 2 weeks. Carl had to put all his willpower to use to not punch his friend in the face. Sometimes he skipped the wine party for made-up reasons, but always edited the videotapes accordingly. One evening, when they sat at the table, Carl said the one thing he had planned for a long time. Hey, Conrad, I want to show you something I was working on. Just promise to keep the secret, all right? It might cause big problems if anybody knows, except for us. The Flash, you're lucky to be alive, Mr. Henderson. They all told me that. Every doctor, nurse, and specialist that came into my hospital room. God, I remember that much. And they weren't wrong. I had flew right out of the windshield of my buddy Dave's car. I hardly remember the night or the accident, but I know we had been drinking, and he was driving. We crashed into another driver at an intersection. No one else survived. I remember waking up the next morning to the beeping of a heart monitor. I remember the look on my wife Rachel's face, her eyes swollen and red from crying, and her telling me over and over again how she thought she was going to lose me. She wasn't in the car with us, and I was thankful for that, because that's the day she told me she was pregnant with our first. I truly was lucky to be alive, and I swore up and down to her that day that I was going to be the husband she deserved. We had hardly been married a year at that point, and I had already messed up so much. But that day, I changed. I made it my life goal for Rachel to always know how much I loved and appreciated her. I went out on less guys' nights and let her go out for more girls' nights. I helped clean the house and cooked dinner on days she worked late. When our second child was born, I took time off work to be with her and help her. When a promotion for her meant more hours, I quit my job to stay home with the kids while she built her career. And I loved every minute of it. Watching the kids grow up into people gave me so much joy. I knew how lucky I was. But when Rachel would come home after a long day to a hot meal waiting on the table for her, and hearing her say, "How did I get so lucky, Sean?" Nothing beats that. My family meant the world to me, and anything I could do to make their lives better made me happy. When the kids, Leah and Robbie, got a bit older, and both were in elementary school, I decided it was time for me to go back to work. I took a job in construction, building things with my hands. Work I could be proud of. It paid off, too, because over the years, I was able to renovate our own home. It was a slow process, doing it myself, one room at a time. At one point, I was sure Rachel was going to divorce me. When the back patio project took a bit longer than I had anticipated and left us without a back door for a couple weeks. But she sure has enjoyed the backyard since then. Their smiles were all I needed to keep going with these projects. Leah got her own ensuite bathroom. For Robbie, a gaming den in the basement. And Rachel had her dream kitchen. 10 years after we bought the house, it looked completely different. I was proud of the life, the family, and the home I had built. I truly was the luckiest man alive, or so I thought. until the headaches started. The first one happened one evening when I was making dinner. It was just Robbie and I home. Rachel was working late, and Leah was at rehearsals for her high school's play. I was making my famous coq au vin, a dish that took a while to prepare, since I had the extra time. Robbie was sitting at the island doing his homework, so he had to witness the whole thing. I had turned on the oven light so I could take a peek inside, which I guess triggered it. I remember thinking the light was so bright, brighter than usual. And then, nothing. I blacked out. It was only for a couple minutes, but it was enough to spook poor Robbie. I could hear him shouting, "Dad! Dad!" I got up off the floor and reassured him that I was okay. Later, during dinner, when we were discussing what had happened, I could see that Rachel was concerned. She wanted me to go see the doctor, but I insisted I was fine. She made the kids, and I promise that if this ever happened again, we'd call an ambulance, or at least make a doctor's appointment. The second time it happened, it was maybe about 6 weeks later. I was at a job site, and a coworker turned on a floodlight. I could see it getting brighter, and this time I heard a blaring noise, but couldn't make out where it was coming from. Everything went black, and I could hear him shouting my name. He told me I was out for only around 5 or 10 minutes. Again, I insisted I was fine, but my boss gave the rest of the day off anyway and told me to take the following day, too, if I needed it. Not wanting to worry Rachel, I chose not to tell her about it. And like an idiot, I didn't make a doctor's appointment. I went to work the next day and felt great. It was a few months before it happened again. And this time, I couldn't hide it from Rachel, because she was there when it happened. It was late, the kids were in bed, and Rachel and I were in the living room. We had just finished watching a movie, and she got up to turn on the lamp. I could hear her talking about the movie, but I was fixated by the light. It got brighter, and I was trying to figure out if it had just moved, or if it was my imagination when the noise started. "What is that noise?" I tried to ask her, but I don't know if all the words came out before it all went black again. When I came back to, Rachel was already on the phone with an ambulance dispatcher. I managed to calm her down enough to agree that the ambulance wasn't necessary, on the condition that I would call our doctor the next morning to make an appointment. Luckily, the dispatcher was on my side, or else I don't think she would have went for it. As promised, I called to make an appointment first thing the next morning. It was scheduled for less than a week away, but I didn't make it until then, before it happened for the last time. All I remember is waking up in the middle of the road and not being able to see anything except bright headlights from a car. My ears were ringing, and the sound of the car horn was fading in and out. I think I heard an ambulance siren, and someone calling my name before blacking out again. But it was hard to be sure. When I woke up again, I was in a hospital bed. There was a woman sitting in a chair who looked angry, or maybe annoyed. And it wasn't until she spoke that I even realized it was Rachel. She looked different. Her hair was darker and shorter. I thought I must have been in a coma for a while, and she let her roots grow in. "Welcome back," she told me, but her welcome didn't sound warm. I asked her if I had been in a coma, and she laughed a little before quickly suppressing it. "No, Sean, you were not in a coma." "Ah, Mr. Henderson, there you are." A nurse bustled into the room. "I hope you'll stay with us this time." "What?" I looked at Rachel, who just stared at me, emotionless. "You've been in and out, mostly out, of consciousness for a few hours now," the nurse explained. "Your wife is a lucky lady to still have you here. The luckiest girl alive," Rachel responded, deadpanned. The nurse didn't seem to notice Rachel's lack of enthusiasm and went on to tell me that there were no broken bones or anything major beyond some bruising, and I could likely go home the following morning. Going home is when things really started to not make sense. For one, none of the renovations were done. It was like it was when we first bought it, which prompted me to ask Rachel if I had a job. "You're joking, right?" She laughed, but didn't answer the question. I was starting to wonder if I had somehow traveled back in time, but my hypothesis was debunked when Robbie came in the front door. He looked about the same as I remembered, except that there was about another 20 pounds of him. He asked Rachel if she could drive him to hockey practice. "You play hockey?" I asked him. Yeah. Mom told me about your accident, but said you were okay. You don't have amnesia or anything, do you?" No, not to worry, Robbie. I'm doing fine. Just a little fuzzy." "Cool," he nodded. "It's just Rob now, though. Mom, are you ready to go? I'm going to be late." "Where is your sister?" I asked, but quickly remembered she probably had rehearsals. "Who knows?" Rachel sighed. "Probably off with that scumbag boyfriend of hers again. I hate that kid's face. He's such a loser. I don't know what she even sees in him. Let's go, Rob. Boyfriend. I mumbled to myself as the door closed behind them, leaving me behind in a house that didn't feel like my own. What kind of alternate reality am I in? Am I dreaming? Is this a prank? When no one came out from behind a fake wall with cameras, I decided that it was not, in fact, a prank, and that I needed to look to information, clues, something to tell me just what in the heck was going on here. It was getting dark, and I hadn't found anything except our legitimate birth certificates, tucked away in an old photo album. Some memories I had, and others I didn't. I decided to cook up a quick pasta for everyone, But Rachel and Robbie, or Rob, stopped for burgers on their way home, and Leah didn't get in until hours later. When I asked her where she'd been, she just gave me a look and went upstairs. "Why didn't you back me up?" I asked Rachel. "It's not worth the energy to argue with her," she responded without looking up from her phone. "I went for a walk to try to clear my head, which didn't work. And when I came back, Rachel was already in bed. I don't know if she was sleeping or just pretending to not notice when I slid under the blanket beside her and said goodnight. In the morning, I got up before everyone else and made breakfast, a feeble attempt to make things normal. Robbie, or Rob, was the only one who seemed to appreciate it. "Oh, sweet," he said, loading a plate with enough bacon, eggs, and pancakes to feed an orphanage. Leah nibbled on a piece of toast, and Rachel just sipped her coffee, looking unimpressed. "Okay, off to school. I can't drive you today. I have a meeting." Again, Mom," Leah whined. "I hate public transit. People who take the bus are disgusting. If you want me to take you, then we have to leave now." "I can take you," I offered, feeling semi-confident in my ability to drive during my current confused state. How are you going to drive if Mom has the car?" She narrowed her eyes at me. I hadn't given any thought about whether I still had my truck. Trying to ignore her attitude, I changed the subject. "So, when is your play?" I didn't miss it, did I? "What play?" "The one you're in at school." "What is it again? Annie? Or was that last year?" "It's Matilda this year, right?" "Oh, you mean the school's stupid play?" "I know you, like, hit your head or whatever. But you seriously thought I'm one of those theater nerd kids?" She tossed her half-eaten toast on the table and walked away. "I'll be in the car." "Good one, Dad," Rob B. said, shoveling the rest of what was on his plate into his mouth with a fork. "You get in the car, too," Rachel told him, pouring her coffee into a travel mug. Rob B. grabbed his backpack and headed out. "Wait," I called after Rachel before she left the room. "What is happening here? Everything is different, but no one else seems to think so, and you don't even seem upset that I was just in an accident." She rolled her eyes. "Upset? I was upset the first time, Sean. But I'm on to you now. If you want to leave this family, then do it. But don't tell me that I'm the one who's different. And for God's sake, don't be such a coward." "What are you talking about?" Now I was really confused. "What do you mean, the first time? When I was in the accident with Dave, before the kids. You weren't in an accident before the kids were born." "Oh my God, I can't do this again. Right now, I'm going to be late." She turned to leave, but I grabbed her arm. "Tell me," I demanded. "You really don't remember?" She scoffed. I loosened my grip, and she jerked away from me. "A couple months ago, you started talking about going back and drove our car into a tree. Seemed like an accident at the time, but now I can see you were really trying to off yourself. pretty sure that's what this is all about now, too. I just blinked at her. I didn't know what to say or think. She straightened her jacket and lifted her purse over her shoulder. Look, Sean, I don't know what's going on with you, and frankly, I just don't have the energy anymore. You need to get help. You think you aren't where you're supposed to be, and I get that. I do. But you have to accept that this is your life, and it's what you make it. She sighed heavily, and I could feel her exasperation. I don't want you here anymore, she continued. Please pack your things up. I have a really long day today, and I don't want to see you here when I get home. I don't care where you go. I don't care if you kill yourself. I just want you gone. And that was it. Just like that, she walked out the door. I heard the car start and drive away. I stood there. I don't know for how long, trying to process what little information I had from that brief interaction. I couldn't make heads or tails of any of it, but I knew one thing for certain. I had to get back to Rachel, my Rachel, and my family. Distorted. I left home 5 years ago. As soon as I crossed that stage, high school diploma in hand, bypassing my peers, swept up by a wave of crying mums and proud grandparents. I was done. The boot of my car held as much of my 18 years of life as I could stuff into 3 boxes and 1 suitcase. I'd armed myself with a bank account full of every tip and paycheck I'd received from my waitressing job and an early acceptance offer from a university 2 states away, as far as I could get from a place I'd once called home. The night before, as my parents sat in some fancy restaurant for a reservation with friends they'd forgotten to tell me about, undoubtedly arguing with each other behind plastic smiles, I packed away my clothes and books and bed sheets in neat little rows until my room was almost barren. Apart from the old wooden furniture, my bedroom was cleaner than it had probably ever been, and I laughed at thinking about how, if the situation was different, it might finally make my mother happy with me. At 10:07 p.m., they arrived home, my father slamming the door as their whisper shouting floated upstairs. I knew they weren't being considerate of the fact that I might be sleeping, but rather they worried about the possibility that a commotion might alert the neighbors, that they would see through the cracks in the foundations of their picture-perfect dream house. They didn't come in to say goodnight. Hadn't since I was 8, and old enough to read myself to sleep. As I pulled out of the parking lot and left my formative school years in the back windshield, I thought about what my parents would tell their friends, the neighbors, the busybodies in the grocery store checkout line. Would they lie and tell everyone I had accepted a scholarship for some prestigious university overseas? Or maybe I'd traveled to Africa to work in humanitarian aid. Something they could brag about and say, "She's made us so proud." Possibly, they'd invent a job with NASA or an internship at Google. They hardly knew enough about me to know what I'd actually be studying or what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was sure they wouldn't be bold enough to tell the truth, that their daughter had disappeared without warning while they spent their day in board meetings and having sex with their personal assistants in hotel rooms paid for by their companies. There would be no missing persons report or flyers offering an egregious sum of money in reward for my safe return home. Nothing that would cast a shadow on their spotless reputations. I would fade further into the background of their lives, as if a figment of their imagination, only resurrected when one of their friends spotted me in one of the professionally shot family photos, stilted and artificial, and asked after me. That's if they kept the frames up at all. My parents would have to dig up my coffin from the deepest parts of their memory, plaster a smile on their face, and grit their teeth. They would spin some vague anecdote about speaking to me on the telephone last Tuesday and how well I was doing, and maybe they'd go visit me at Christmas. They'd have forgotten all about me by the time they brought out the first course. I mean, they hardly remembered I existed, even while we lived under the same roof. That's why I was so shocked when they called me one Sunday, 5 years after I left town and never looked back, and asked me to come for a visit soon. I had no idea how they knew my number. I'd changed it after moving and never given them the new one. That's why I didn't respond for almost a minute after hearing my father's voice through the tiny speaker. I almost convinced myself I was dreaming or having a stroke. Maybe I'd temporarily slipped into an alternate reality where it was normal for my father to have my number, to call me out of the blue and invite me over. Anything to explain why the fuck he was calling. There was no special occasion. Nobody was sick and dying, and there was no upcoming birthday to celebrate. They just wanted to see how I was doing and make amends. They missed me, they said, through the crackling of the landline. I wondered if they had finally snapped and gone crazy, if they'd learned a sense of humor and this was some kind of prank. Or perhaps they had early onset dementia and had forgotten that I had never been much more than a roommate they had complained about having to spend their hard-earned money on. I told them I would think about it and immediately hung up. I spent the next 2 days trying to forget about it altogether until I came home from work to a letter in my mailbox, a one-way ticket dated 2 weeks from then, set to arrive at the airport an hour out from the town I grew up in. On the front of the envelope, my address, written in my mother's sloping, elegant handwriting. Nausea settled in the pit of my belly. How did they know my address? I'd not kept in contact with a single person from my childhood. The hairs on the back of my neck tingled as the growing sense of being watched settled into my skin. Then A thought popped into my head. Had they known the whole time? Had they known where I was all these years and never bothered to reach out? Suddenly, I was 12 again, and realizing my parents were never going to care about me the way the kids at school were cared for. This confirmed what I had always known. I was alone in this world. It took some deliberating, but I decided I would go. I would see what it was they wanted from me, and if they really had changed. I told myself I wouldn't give in to whatever manipulation tactics they might pull. I would be strong and remain distant. And when it was done, I would demand that they never contact me again. Even still, my bones were heavy with paranoia the following weeks. I elected to hire a rental car to drive from the airport to their house. There was no way I'd give my parents the satisfaction of driving me, of having any modicum of control over me once more. And this way, if I needed to leave, I wouldn't be forced to wait 20 minutes for a taxi. I parked on the street. The house had been repainted a soft eggshell color instead of the previous gray and rows of gardenias lined the fence where there had once been neat box hedges. I breathed deeply through my nose before raising my hand to knock. My mother pulled the door open as my fist made contact with the wood, causing me to stumble back. She must have been watching me from the window, waiting. She was smiling. That was strange in its own right, but it was weirder because I knew it wasn't my mother's smile. Her smile never reached her eyes. She would never do anything that would cause lines to form on her face. Her smile always gave you the sense that she was laughing at you rather than with you, pitying you. My mother did not smile, but when she did, it was always forced. This was a genuine smile. It was happy. I felt immediately that something was deeply wrong. A shiver ran through my spine. There was something wrong about her face. It was fuzzy around the edges, as if she was wearing a mask. I rubbed at my eyes with closed fists, trying to clear my vision. But the effect remained. I figured I was tired from my flight, but the closer I inspected her, the clearer it became that something was off. It looked as if someone had tried to draw her face as accurately as possible. After taking a long glance at a picture of it, my mother reached towards me with outstretched arms and drew me into an embrace. I stood stiffly, with my arms by my side, trying and failing to remember when she had last hugged me. Surely at some point in my childhood. Definitely not after the age of 10. She invited me inside. This house was nothing like the one I'd left. Cold and sparse, decorated as if a model home. It was warm and filled with color and light. I wondered if somehow my memories of my horrible, lonely childhood had managed to warp my recollection of the house itself. But I knew that wasn't right. This new hallway was illuminated by a warm glow, and funky paintings hung from the walls. The dining table was set with a red gingham tablecloth that my mother would have called tacky, and a vase of sunflowers. In the kitchen, my father took a large tray out of the oven before pausing to take a long pull from the neck of a beer bottle. I had never seen my father drink beer before. He used to say it was the common man's drink, and that real men drank whiskey. He turned to say hello, and where his face had once been clean-shaven and professional, stubble grew freely. Like my mother, something was off, and it wasn't just the facial hair. His nose was smaller than I remembered, eyes just a fraction too far apart. From afar, or at a passing glance, it was the man I'd grown up with, but as he stepped closer to greet me, his features shifted. It was like looking at an optical illusion, and when I changed my gaze, the true image would slip into place. They watched me. To anyone else, it might seem they were worried, for I hadn't said a word since my mother opened the door, but I could see it in their eyes, the suspicion. They were wondering if I'd noticed, waiting for me to say something. I stuttered out empty platitudes about being happy to see them, and they shuffled me over to sit at the table. Dinner was pistachio-encrusted chicken breast served with a peach and goat cheese salad. When my father announced the menu, I stopped short, fork raised halfway to my mouth. My mother was allergic to pistachios. This was a fact she despised, as she perceived any sort of weakness to be a flaw, and my mother was not flawed. I said as much, but my mother just stared at me with an odd look and told me she didn't have any allergies. She never had. And then she went on eating, cutting her chicken into bite-sized cubes and placing them delicately on her tongue, never breaking out in hives or becoming short of breath as her throat closed up. I was beginning to feel as if I was going out of my mind. I managed to stumble my way through conversation, letting my parents do the brunt of the work, barely processing a word they said. I excused myself to my room, citing exhaustion and an early night. My father followed with my bag, and as I reached the top of the stairs and turned right towards my old bedroom, he laughed at me. It wasn't the same boisterous laugh he'd had at dinner when discussing his golfing buddies. It was sharp and croaky, like it didn't belong to him. I hadn't seen my father laugh enough as a child to know which one was more his own. My bedroom was to the left, he said, with a curious look on his face. Don't you remember? And he pushed past me, guiding me down the corridor to a room I knew was not mine. I followed him slowly. Inside the doorway, he dropped my bag, calling good night over his shoulder as he moved back downstairs. I locked the door. The furniture was the same, but there were pictures on the wall I had no recollection of. Myself and my parents at the beach and in the snow and with my grandparents. These were not my pictures. My mother hated the sand, and the first time I'd been to the beach was with some uni friends a year after I left home. I had never met my grandparents, let alone taken photographs with them. They had both died before I was born. I sat down on the bed. It was made tidily, with the same striped sheets I had packed in a box all those years ago. I sat there for hours, listening as my parents cleaned and made their way to bed. When I was sure they were sleeping, I slipped out the door and into the rental car. As I drove to the airport, heart racing against my rib cage, I knew one thing for sure. I was certain that those people were not my parents. Heartbeat of the home. Why can't I remember? He thought. His mind would only reveal flashes of the afternoon's events. His head was on fire, sweat dripping down his face like an addict on autopilot. Grant Liscombe burst through the front door, avoiding his mother in the kitchen. Like a spider returning to its web, his lanky teenage legs scurried up the wooden stairs of the old farmhouse to his bedroom. His arms flailed with uncontrollable fear as he yanked the dirt-covered shirt over his head, discarded it on the floor, then bounded to the bathroom, slamming the door. "What have I done? What have I done?" he muttered, lathering the perfumed soap through his fingers, frantic to wash the guilt from his newly calloused hands, watching the streaks of dirt dance and swirl down the rusty drain. His mind was confused by broken images of helping to clean the gutters, the ladder falling. Or was it pushed? The thud as Nick's body hit the ground, and the gleam of the metal shovel as Grant dug the body-sized hole. He confronted the reflection in the mirror, the gaunt, bloodshot, black-haired punk he had become. Oh God, what have you done? The reflection glared back with an evil grin. It began about a month ago, after his factory worker stepfather, Nick, lost his job. Grant's middle-aged mother, Jane, with little work experience, was initially grateful for the offer to stay at her aunt's derelict house, remotely located in the Haliburton Highlands of Ontario. Soon, she would regret it. They arrived late on an October evening, rain pelting down. The overwhelming stench of mold and decay nauseated Grant as he stepped onto the porch, past two white rattan chairs resembling broken skeleton bones. Like two cracked teeth, the front window panes whistled as Nick opened the door, and a rush of twisted oak leaves fluttered into the foyer, landing at the base of an antique grandfather clock. "Wow, look at that beauty," Grant exclaimed, smitten with the intricate carvings of the mahogany cabinet, the shiny gold filigree face, moon dial and hands all in pristine condition, a sharp contrast to the rest of the house. "Hey, Mom, didn't Grandpa have a clock like this?" He set down his backpack, rubbed his hands over the smooth, flawless finish, inhaling the rich smell of lacquer and lemon polish, opened the case to wind the weights, then set the hands to the correct time. "Yes, he did," she answered, removing her coat and shaking the rain from her short blonde hair. "But not as old as this one. Remember what Grandpa always said? The tick of a clock is the heartbeat of the home," they repeated in unison, their heartfelt laughter filling the room with his memory. "But seriously, Grant," she said, pointing at the clock. "That thing gives me the creeps," Grant shrugged. Then, as he tapped the pendulum to start the clock, he felt a sudden chill in the air, a quiver in the continuum of space and time. The walls around him seemed to expand and contract, like the lungs of the house had taken a deep breath. "Are you all right, Grant?" His mother's face concerned. "You look pale." "He's fine," said Nick. "Quit coddling him, Jane. He isn't a child anymore." He chuckled and gently kissed her forehead. "I'll finish bringing in the rest of the stuff." Grant sensed something was terribly wrong. Something had taken control of his body. His mind shouted with fear as his consciousness slipped deeper into an abyss, and a different, cunning voice answered, "I'm okay, Mom." After the family had settled in for the night, the clock softly chimed the midnight hour, and its demon contemplated setting its evil plans in motion. Returning to his room, Grant changed into clean clothes and put on some loud, heavy metal music. He suspected his mother was having issues with his new identity. He began rifling through his closet, not sure what he was looking for. Then, at last, he found it: the metal slugger baseball bat. As he held the handle, he confirmed that Mother was next. "Grant," his mother called from the kitchen, aroma of roast beef wafting up the stairs. "Are you guys done outside? Dinner's almost ready." The stairs creaked with warning as he descended each step. Slow and deliberate, bat at the ready. A satanic song blared out of his room, the heavy bass pounding the walls. Thump, thump, thump. "Turn it down," she shouted, stirring the gravy pot, steam filling the room from the whistling kettle. But his music grew louder. He continued his mission, unhindered. From deep inside, Grant could feel the raw hatred of the demon inhabiting his body, its cruel intention, but was powerless to intervene. Suddenly, like a beacon of light through the darkness, he heard a familiar voice. "Remember the heartbeat of the home." It was Grandpa. "Grant," the voice said, "kill the heartbeat." Jane Liscombe turned off the stove and stormed out of the kitchen, down the hall, stopping at the grandfather clock at the base of the stairwell. I said, "Turn it." Stopping mid-sentence, she screamed and jumped back, just as the bat came crashing down, barely missing its target. Grant gripped tighter, then swung again, this time hitting a home run as the bat smashed the glass of the grandfather clock, dislodging the pendulum and sending it flying across the room. The chimes clanged noisily in pain as he swung again and again until the battered clock showed no signs of life. Grant's grandfather's undying love had helped him overcome the demon within him and return to H.'s former self. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked, reaching out to hold her, just as Nick came limping through the front door, rubbing his head. "Nick, you're alive!" Grant shouted in surprise and relief, running to hug him. "Nick, are you all right?" "What happened?" Jane asked, still badly shaken. "I thought he was holding the ladder," he said angrily. "Must have fallen and knocked myself out." He looked around in disbelief at the shards of glass and pieces of wood scattered on the floor. "What the hell happened here? I'll explain in the car. We've got to leave. Now," Grant exclaimed as he helped Nick and his mother out of the house. They drove to the nearest motel, never to return. 2 years later, a young couple turned the key in the tarnished brass lock of their newly rented farmhouse in the Halliburton Hills, and as the warm sunlight shone into the foyer, a spectacular sight was revealed. A beautiful mahogany grandfather clock, a rose-scented Santa Claus. Mrs. Claus doesn't bake cookies. She doesn't prepare any dessert at all, for that matter. Her husband eats enough cookies to last him 1 year on his journey around the globe. Instead, she cracks 5 eggs, 3 for him, 2 for her, spreads butter on toast, tosses a bowl of fruit for them to share, and prepares her husband's favorite, a mug of coffee with frothed reindeer milk and candy cane crumbles on top. It always gives him a nice boost before the annual Christmas soiree, which is hosted by the elves, forever adorers, kiss-asses, another might say, of the man in the red suit. This cup of joe will definitely give him a kick. The clock reads 5:35 a.m. He should be arriving soon, no later than 6, she hopes. If he's on time, their Christmas tradition can go on as usual. In the first 25 years of their marriage, she'd hear the reindeer and their jingling bells land on their cottage's immense sleighway at 6 on the dot. For the last 8 years, he was always 10, 20, even 30 minutes late. "Old age," explained the elder elf through the years. She scoffed openly at his comment. 65 was not that old. Last year, Mr. Claus arrived an hour late due to a highly rare reindeer injury. Plight, the Rudolph of the group. There were others with noses to guide the way, but Rudolph was the original, had broken a leg. Before he landed, Mrs. Claus was so distraught by her husband's recurring tardiness that she'd thrown the entire breakfast in the trash and dumped the coffee in the sink. 5:45 now. She should soon be hearing Santa's ho 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 as he slows his sleigh in the sky. She doesn't. But her anger is now water underneath a frozen layer of cool indifference. She grabs the coffee pot and pours 2 cups now, prepares his, then lays it on the pine tree-shaped coaster. 5:50. 6:00. 6:01. She waits at the table. At 6:25, Santa Claus lands. From inside, she hears the elves cheering, clapping, celebrating. No doubt they're all wearing their best elf suits, midnight black and made of pure wool, ready for the party that starts in 45 minutes. Mrs. Claus stopped going out to greet her husband 3 years ago. Old age and whatnot, she told the elder elf with a stiff, sweet smile, whose reply was merely an awkward smile and hesitant nod. Mrs. Claus waits at the circular wooden table on the chair that faces the door of their small cottage. Just a minute later, better to walk past those elves, lest they talk your ear off. The door opens, and in walks the man of the hour. Noel, known to her and some close friends, smiles. She knows what he's going to say next, because it's the same thing he says every year. Mrs. Claus deepens and roughens her voice to imitate her husband as he says, "I can't wait to shave this damn thing off." Noel laughs, and she does too. She still does love this man very much. Nothing, no one, could ever snatch that feeling away from her. Noel loves being Santa. She still remembers the pride on his face, mixed with shock and sudden nerves, when the elf jury chose him for the task. This was way back when he was Noel Fable, and she, Winter Frost, back when they'd only stolen a kiss or two and were too shy to hold hands in public. She'd never imagined she'd be Mrs. Claus, and certainly never thought about how their lives could look 28 years later. They selected him just 1 hour after Nick Claus had passed away at 75. It was, and had to be, a swift process. She'd wondered what it'd feel like if her husband died, and just 60 minutes later, people were lining up to replace him. She also thought about who it'd be. Perhaps Elliot Ryder, the young man who'd fixed up Plight's leg last year. She quite liked Elliot. He was the only one who was honest with her and told her that the only reason Plight would injure his leg, the others left unscathed, would be because he didn't want to land on a certain roof. Despite popular belief, reindeer are not loyal to the man with the bag himself, but rather the cause of Christmas itself. In fact, she too might say that she was dedicated to the cause, if need be. So why wouldn't he want to land? Elliot had asked her. She'd merely shrugged, because that was none of his business. She'd be replaced too, of course. If the new Santa had a honey, then it'd happen immediately. If he was single and ready to jingle, then later. But she'd be stripped of the name Claus and forced to move on. At least she'd get to keep their home and have a comfortable place to grieve. It was a quick and cruel but necessary procedure. Christmas didn't wait for anybody, and the North Pole was legally required to meet those children's demands. "Come sit, my love," Mrs. Claus says, patting the seat of the empty chair beside her. Noel obeys and moves closer to her. Before sitting, he leans in and gives her a sweet kiss on the cheek. The first time that Mrs. Claus smelled roses off his puffy white beard, she didn't question it. The third time, it had made her eyebrows furrow, but they'd had breakfast, and she'd moved on. The fourth time, suspicion came. Only confirmation followed in the next years. A perfume that didn't belong to her, that didn't actually exist on the North Pole at all, where there were only cinnamon, hot chocolate, pine, and other related scents. The tardiness and the incident last year only added to the pile of evidence. He threw in the logs and the kindling. Add a flame, and what else could you get but a fire? The scent now makes her knuckles turn white as snow against the mug's handle. "My favorite part of the day," Noel says as he finally sits. He reaches for the coffee cup, and Mrs. Claus only stares with a smile that looks like a sticker someone threw on her face and stuck. It doesn't take one sip. He tells her about his night, skipping over certain details she imagines. Not that she wants to know. And together they eat. She finds that she has no trouble swallowing the eggs, chewing on the toast, even sipping her coffee. Not even when Noel starts slurring his words while talking about the best cookie of the night. She places the mug down with a soft thump as the slurs become choking sounds. She notices drops of milk on his mustache then. He looks at her with a confused expression, and those still gloved hands go to his neck. But Mrs. Claus doesn't move. Not even when he calls out for a name that is not her own. The smell of roses is still fresh under her nose when Mr. Claus starts turning purple. Santa falls off the chair, and Mrs. Claus, like any good wife, screams and calls for help. Thursday night. Rain pattered on the roof of Grandma's house as Christine settled in after Thanksgiving dinner. She sat on the plush carpet and started playing solitaire on the coffee table. Mom was hollering at the football game, but Christine was doing her best to tune that out. Grandma was in the kitchen, finishing the dishes. Dinner itself had been the usual stuff: turkey, mashed potatoes, stuffing, green beans. It was a nicer, heartier meal than Christine usually ate. Now she was pleasantly full, enjoying her cards and the relative peace and quiet. "Why are the Lions attempting a field goal?" Mom roared, jumping up. She bumped the coffee table and fell back onto the couch. The game went to commercial. Oh, Christine sighed heavily, picking up her fallen cards. "Sorry, kid," her mother said, rubbing her sore knee. "You know how it is." Christine nodded. It was always like this with football and true crime for some reason. She was glad it was only Mom here being noisy instead of the whole family. Grandma stepped into the living room, wiping her hands off on a towel. She hung it on the back of one of the wooden chairs at the little dining table, on the opposite side of the room from Christine and Mom. "I wish you'd let us help you," Mom said. "Dishes would have been done a lot sooner." No, Grandma said. "After being away for so long, I almost missed doing my own dishes. Besides, there weren't that many." "I tried to get the older kids to come," Mom said. The game was back on, so her eyes were on the TV as she spoke. But they had other plans. In-laws, I guess. And you know how Dad is. With this last remark, she gave Christine a joking slap on the shoulder. Christine was glad her father and siblings weren't there. When they all got together, they talked too loud, and it would get too hot, and they would pick on and embarrass her. No, she much preferred this little get-together. "I keep telling you it's fine," Grandma said. She sat on the opposite end of the couch so that Christine was between them. She smiled at Christine. "It's kind of neat that we have 3 generations here." Christine nodded, smiling. "Touchdown!" Mom yelled and jumped up again, narrowly avoiding the coffee table this time. Thud. "Oh, for the love of..." Grandma cut herself off. "What did you knock over this time? I hope you haven't broken anything." "Shh!" Mom held a finger to her lips and whispered, "That wasn't me. I think it came from outside." Grandma leaned back on the couch and put her feet up. "Probably just the rain, then." "Right," Mom said. She seemed unsure, but she sat back down and was quickly reabsorbed in the game. Christine hesitated, card in hand. "Grandma," she asked. Her voice always came out softer than she expected. "Are you sure it's nothing?" "Of course," Grandma said proudly. "After a month of running around Europe, staying in all kinds of places with all kinds of people, these little noises don't frighten me anymore." "Was it scary in Europe?" Christine asked. She had to repeat the question because of Grandma's hearing and Mom's hollering. When she finally got the question, she answered, "Oh, no. I had a few near misses, but that happens anywhere. Actually, I think you should go sometime. You'd like it." Christine smiled and went back to her cards. She had only placed 2 cards down when she heard another noise. Crash! Her head whirled toward the sound. She noticed Mom and Grandma do the same. Mom muted the TV and looked back at them. "You heard that too?" she asked in a hush. Grandma nodded. Mom patted her pockets. "Ugh, must have left my phone in the car," she said. She looked at Grandma. "Where's yours?" "My cell phone?" asked Grandma. You know I can't keep track of that thing. Mom looked to Christine. Christine slid her phone out of her pocket and held up the black screen. Why do you think I'm playing solitaire? Mom dragged her hands down her face. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Grandma said. It's probably nothing. I'll go take a look. No, Mom said. You stay here with Christine while I go take a look. Do you still have my old baseball bat by the door? Grandma rolled her eyes and gestured to it. Mom picked it up and gripped it tight. She tossed on her raincoat and bolted the door. You two stay here. I'll have a look around the back. Be careful, Christine said. Mom laughed and ruffled her hair. I will. She kissed Christine on the top of her head and went through the kitchen and out the back door. It was silent as they waited, listening. The house isn't that big, Christine said, wringing her hands. How long could it take to look around? Grandma wrapped Christine up in her arms. Your mom's just being dramatic, dear, she said. She'll probably go out and search the whole woods before she's satisfied. What if there's something out there, like a bear, or a vampire, or a maniac with an axe? Christine cried into Grandma's shoulder. Grandma shook her head. Christine, where on earth would you get ideas like that? Christine pushed Grandma away and plopped down onto the couch. I know it's ridiculous. I'm just worried about Mom. After a pause, she added, and you know the only thing she loves more than football is true crime. I was practically raised by Keith Morrison. Christine and Grandma looked at each other, confirming to each other that they had both heard it. An unearthly groaning. It sounded close. Christine shot up from the couch. Something's happened to Mom. I just know it. Grandma grabbed her arm. Don't be rash, dear. Christine suddenly wished the rest of her family were here. No wild animal or axe murderer would attack such a large party. She wasn't sure if the same could be said for supernatural creatures, but maybe her sisters or brothers or father would know what to do about them. Christine tugged her arm free from Grandma's grip. I'm going after her. You can come with me if you want. What were we thinking, splitting up like this? That's how they always get you in horror movies. Christine pulled on her raincoat, flipped up the hood, and flung open the door. Lightning cracked. On the porch, a figure was silhouetted against the storm, carrying Mom, unconscious in its arms. Grandma cried out and rushed forward. Rain instantly soaked her to the bone. Christine ran out after her to help. Wait, the stranger said. It was a man. Stop! Give me back my daughter! Grandma shouted. She and Christine kept pulling on his arms, trying to free Mom from his clutches. Dorothy! The man cried out. They all paused at the mention of Grandma's name. Finally, the man huffed. Can we go inside so I can explain? Oh, Sean, I'm so embarrassed, Grandma said. They were all back in the living room. Mom was laid out on the couch with a compress on her head. Christine and the man, Sean, were sitting at the dining table. Grandma placed a steaming cup of tea in front of Sean. "I didn't recognize you," Grandma continued. Sean chuckled. "I don't blame you. Anyone would be nervous in this situation." "Excuse me," Christine cut in. "But, who are you? And what happened to Mom?" "Oh," Grandma said. "This is Sean, dear. I met him while I was in England. He saved my life." "She's exaggerating," Sean said. "Not so," said Grandma. "He pulled me out of the way, just as I was about to be hit by a bus." Sean sipped his tea demurely. "I told him he could come by for a visit any time," Grandma said. "I tried to call, but I never got any answer. I remembered she doesn't use her cell phone, so I decided to surprise her," Sean explained with another little chuckle. "Oh, well, thank you for saving her," Christine said. "And Mom?" "I found her just in front of the porch. She must have slipped off the step and hit her head." Christine sipped at her own tea, feeling silly. She was glad the whole thing was over. Thud. Christine, Grandma, and Sean all looked at each other. They had all heard the noise. Christine looked at Mom. She had rolled off the couch and was groaning as she climbed back up onto it. "Anyone know who won the game?" she asked. "Clock is a tickin'." "Freeze, jabroni. Don't make a move." Carl almost burst out laughing until he turned around and saw the camouflage gear-festooned, rodent-faced man pointing what could only be a large-caliber handgun directly at him. "I told you don't make a move. Now turn around and put your hands behind your back," shrilled the man with the gun. Carl, a tall, thin, balding man with blue eyes, was no longer in a laughing mood. In fact, a sense of ice-cold terror was trickling down his spine. He'd never had a gun pointed at him before. Teetering on the edge of panic, Carl asked the armed man, "Just to be clear, do you want me to freeze and remain still, or turn around and place my arms behind my—" "Shut up, jabroni! Just do what you're told, and nobody gets hurt," barked the gunman. But Carl saw a cloud of confusion pass over the man's rat-like face. Immediately, Carl instinctively knew the man had never pointed a gun at anyone before, and that knowledge placed them on a level playing field, at least to a certain extent. "Hey, look, man, I don't have any problems with you," Carl said as calmly as he could. "I'm just here. Look, my wife got me a new tarp for our trailer for Christmas, and I'm just here to strip off the old tarp and throw the new one on. Who are you, anyway?" Carl's trailer was parked next to the Skookumchuck River in a remote rural area of Washington State. Beautiful in the summer, but right now it was December 27th, and freezing rain was dripping from the slate gray sky onto the small collection of aging recreational vehicles parked along the muddy banks of the Skookumchuck. "I got no problems with you either, provided you're not a Fed. Now show me some ID." The armed man was still barking orders, but it was clear that the burst of adrenaline was waning. and his voice had lost its threatening edge. "Quit pointing that gun at me, and let me get my driver's license, okay? What's your name, anyway?" "And what are you doing here?" Carl said, as he showed the man his Oregon driver's license. "You went across state lines, huh? Not a bad idea." "Well, shit. I guess we gotta stick together in desperate times anyways, don't we? The name's Victor, but you can call me Vic." "Damn nice to meet you, Carl. Sorry I was less than welcoming, but you know how it is," Vic said, tucking his pistol into his pants and drawing the back of his hand across his nose before offering Carl a manly handshake. "This here's my trailer," Vic said, casting his head toward an RV about 20 feet from Carl's. "Well, technically, it belongs to my Uncle Kevin, but he's too damn old and doesn't truly appreciate the magnitude of the threat." Carl took a deep breath. Suddenly, he felt somewhat restored to his equilibrium. He knew Kevin. Shit. Carl had been parking his trailer in these woods for about 16 years. He was at least casually acquainted with the other campers and fishermen who frequented the site. As Carl internalized the vital information that Vic wasn't just some random lunatic or escaped convict, he said, "Holy hell, Vic. I know old Kev. Known him for years. Wait, the magnitude of... What is this threat you're referring to?" Vic went still, and his hand wandered to his waistband, where the gun was tucked away. He gave Carl a skeptical stare, and then silently assessed their surroundings. The gentle roar of the river was a backdrop for the occasional chirp of a bird. But otherwise, all was silent. Vic's eyes flickered up into the evergreens and peered into the underbrush, but nothing moved. There was no breeze, and the rain was just a mist that hung in the air, along with the scent of moss. Carl belatedly realized that Vic had been out in the woods for a while. His jawline was scruffy, and the pores on his nose were black and visible. Dirt was caked under his fingernails, and his hair was stingy and greasy. "What threat?" Vic hissed. "You playing games with me, Carl? Because you wouldn't be out here if you weren't keyed in, and I don't appreciate being toyed with." No. That's not what I meant. Listen, I'm just trying to understand your assessment of the threat, Vic. We need to share intel if we are gonna get a handle on the... Shit, man. You want some beef jerky? Carl asked, as he yanked a packet of Jack Links out of his pocket and tore it open. Vic accepted a hunk of jerky and gestured that Carl would follow him to his trailer. After about a dozen steps, Vic stopped in his tracks and surveilled the tree line for snipers. But soon enough, they were ensconced in the comfy confines of the almond beige wood paneling in old Kev's RV, chewing jerky and discussing strategy. Soundgarden issued softly from the tape deck as Vic chuckled and said, "Leave it to the computer nerds to completely disregard the obvious fact that we are gonna run out of digits. Goddamn educated idiots is what I call, hello? Vic could do a pretty accurate Jerry Seinfeld impression. Sweet fancy Moses. Yeah, but what'll happen? What's gonna happen when the clock strikes midnight on New Year's Eve? Carl asked. And Vic just shook his head and said, boom, digital apocalypse. We run out of digits. Think about it. Our entire lives, ever since the invention of computers, we've been running on 2 digits. Wait, what? Carl said. There are shitloads of digits, like 8 or 9 at least. Let me ask you this, Vic said, leaning forward. What year did you graduate high school? Class of '94, Carl said. And the year you were born? Vic insisted, leaning closer. 75. What's your point? Carl said, confused. My point? My point? Vic said, locking Carl in his beady gaze. My point is that when we go from 99 to 2000, boom, digital apocalypse, brah. Nobody has ever thought of the consequences. There are no guardrails in place, no safety net. Carl, think about it. Realization dawned on Carl as he said, Vic, how the fuck did you figure all this out? Do you work for the CIA or something? Vic just chuckled and slowly shook his head. Ever heard of dial-up internet jabroni? My parents have it in my dad's office in the basement. Let's just say it's not just for email and porn anymore. I've done my own research. Fuck, Carl muttered, collapsing back into his chair. Do you think my ATM card will stop working? I'm afraid it's much worse than that, amigo, Vic whispered. It's effectively a Mayan calendar scenario. The end is upon us, and we are gonna need to be prepared. The fucking Mayan calendar? Carl, suddenly animated, exclaimed as he threw his truck keys to Vic. All hands on deck, Vic. You are the wheelman. I'll watch your 6. We need to get down to the 7-Eleven before dark, fuel up the rig, and load up on ammunition. 10-4. Carl, Vic said over his shoulder, but he skittered to a stop just before they reached the truck, grabbed Carl by the front of his jacket, and said, We are gonna need a lot more of this jerky, Carl. We need to sequester as many more packs of Jack Links as we can. Do you read me? I read you loud and clear, good buddy. Now let's get to gettin'. Clock is tickin', jabroni. Clock is a tickin', pebble. Rain pattered against glass. Burnt beans overtook the scent of fresh bread. Voices overlapped as stories were shared and gossip was spilled. The game played on the TV. We were winning. The buzz in the air was almost intoxicating. Even the rain couldn't dull it. Gray stared at the brown liquid. Steam rose, collecting into beads of sweat as his face hovered over the cream-colored mug. Blonde curls curtained flushed skin and bleeding lips as his teeth pulled at the delicate skin. He was in his own air. The buzz flowed around him. His ears were stuffed with the nectar of the past. It seeped out, dripped down his arm, burned through his skin, revealing scars that were hidden with years of neglect. Nails cracked as he dug into the wooden table. His mind swirled. The nectar was thick. It was creeping through the crevices of his head, consuming thoughts he pushed down and forcing him to face it. Metal filled his mouth as Gray bit down harder on his lips. Pain filled his face, and the sob got stuck in his throat. Taking a deep breath, he picked up the mug and took a sip of the bitter liquid. It stung at his bruised lips, but the taste was welcome. A deep breath led to long sigh, releasing tension as he slumped over the table. Pebble? He clenched his eyes closed as his mind flooded. The bricks of the dam slammed and slammed against the limit of his conscious as the memories flooded over him. Gray scrambled across the sticky ground. He gripped at the blood-soaked hoodie, pulling the small body into his arms. His fingers left trails as he rubbed at the bruised skin, hoping his touch would wake him up. Pebble, come on. What he thought was a yell was nothing more than a cracked whisper. Shaking hands gripped at curls that were just like his, just a bit brighter in color. He just kept repeating himself, holding the one good thing in his world, rocking him back and forth like he had to do to help him fall asleep just a couple years ago. A few feet away, smoke rose from the 5th cigarette lit today. It found its home between cracked lips. Lips that never once said anything that portrayed an ounce of care. Those lips belonged to a woman of dirty beauty. Beautiful blonde curls that have been passed along for generations framed a pretty pale face that was stressed by a chosen sickness. She stared at the scene, the bodies that were her offspring, at least by the doctor's words. But just 'cause the doctor said it doesn't mean she cares for it. The law forces her hand, forces her to obey her parental expectations, but it can't make her look at them with anything but an icy indifference. That indifference made her not care when they cried, when they needed to be held, when they needed someone to praise them, when they won, and support them when they fell. That is why, when her youngest was beaten with vase after vase until the glass shards impaled him because he whined too much, she didn't move a muscle. One less expense. Tears were dripping into his coffee, little splatters staining his clenched hands. He took one and bit on it, holding inside his screams as what happened just a few hours ago replayed. Stepping inside the decade-old home, the wood creaking with every step, the excitement he felt with Deku swinging in his pocket, imagining the look on Pebble's face as he held his favorite character in his hands. Then the way his soul dropped into the pit of his stomach. How his vision blurred until the only thing he could see was his little brother laying on the smoke-infested rug, his blood making it an even darker shade of black. The glass fractures, creating a mosaic of different colors that flickered in the light of the dusty swing lamp. Knots formed at the bottom of Gray's stomach. It burned. It hurt. The more he pushed it away, the more it forced itself forward. Their mother sitting there, watching, dusting the ashes off her pants. Their father's snores, traveling from down the hall. He bit into his skin until it split. Luckily, his shirt was black. No one could see the blood that was making it stick to his chest. Just the dirt that's layered on top of it. He couldn't leave his brother laying there. Someone had to bury him. Someone tapped him on the shoulder. Gray turned his head, blood trailing down his chin. "Are you okay, honey?" It was a middle-aged lady. Her hair was thrown into a tight ponytail that made her sharp features pop out even more. He licked his sore lips. Looking down, he had bit into the white meat of his hand. Blood trickled down his skin and dripped onto the table. Puffy eyes, blood-tinted skin and lips, dirt-stained clothes. Gray knew he looked a mess, swallowing his answer. His voice probably wasn't going to work anyway. He grabbed his coffee mug and walked right past her. Curious eyes probed at him as he walked towards the glass doors. Someone behind him was asking him to wait. But he didn't listen, or he couldn't hear. Either way, he walked straight into storm, the rain soaking his body in just a few minutes. Puddles splashed, cars honked, wet grass coated abused shoes. Gray let his feet lead the way. They brought him to the park. It was empty, of course. He climbed onto the playground, crawling his way into the little tunnel, the one place that was still dry. Somehow, he was still holding on to the mug. He took a sip. It tasted like brown water in the tube, surrounded by the rain cascading down. He let himself cascade. Sobs spilled out until his whole body shook. His hands not able to find the right place to stay. He kept trying to stick them in his pockets, but then he remembered Deku wasn't there. It was tight in Pebble's hand. He gripped his hair, his scalp protesting. His mother's nonchalant figure, his father's peaceful rest, Pebble's warm body lying there, still. It lit something in him. Everything he was holding inside, all that he kept hidden, to keep a smile on his little brother's face, all he dealt with to protect him, everything he never gained that he gave. His sobs trailed off into a coughing spill. His mind broke. The pain spilled over, the cuts, the bruises, the memories. The mug cracked locked in his tightening grip, his shaking hands from the cold, or his anger he didn't know. With a crack, the mug spilled into his lap, and a deafening scream spilled from his lips, the force bruising his already sore throat. It filled the tube. The storm swallowed it, taking his pain into its grasp as his vision blurred with red. Toodle-oo! Mayor Ottentail, Arizona, 1875. Painter, the man known throughout town only by his profession, rolls onto his back, letting out a phlegmy cough, skin and bones, with one sad gray eye and the other covered by a patch and sporting a bushy brown beard and the remnants of a rumpled suit. Painter possesses immense talent. He's created numerous portraits and landscapes, as well as the risque painting of Painted Lady Queen Winona that hangs over the Wild Weed Saloon's bar. But he drinks away what money he makes. I'm letting you out so you can enjoy Mayor Ottentail's 3-day birthday celebration, Marshal Cy Kincaid says, a towering, authoritative figure with a deep voice and rugged looks. 35-year-old New Hampshire native Cy is assisted in his duties by his 33-year-old Biloxi-born Deputy Van Sickle, whose droopy mustache, short, skinny frame, and lack of education belie his courage. It's bad enough this rat trap town is named after him, Painter says. The only thing that blathering weasel deserves is a birthday cake with a stick of dynamite in it. You're off your mental reservation. For somebody who's only been here a year, you sure formulated a deep dislike for the mayor, Van notes. It ain't 'cause he's a southerner, is it? 'Cause if it is, you and me gonna have a tussle. Painter pulls his rumpled vest into place. No, it's who he is. He's been mayor here for 7 years, Cy says. 7 prosperous years. He helped start the bank and sank his own role into the general store and the livery stable. He hired us to protect the town. He's talked up your skills as an artist and sent you business. Just because he teases you once in a while about your liquor intake doesn't make him a bad man. You ought to kiss his feet. I've got something else he can kiss. Chad, exiting the town hall, Mayor Druce Ottentail surveys the town's crowded streets. Banners are stretched between buildings, saying, "Happy birthday to our beloved mayor," and "Happy 40th, Mayor Ottentail." Salesmen hawking remedies, clowns handing out candy, peddlers selling silks, and stalls offering games of skill line the streets. Druce grumbles when he sees his wife posing for a portrait. Opal Ottentail is noted for her pale, delicate looks. She is also witty, erudite, knowledgeable, and caring. Qualities missing in Druce, who is viewed as all business, as suggested by his reedy build, stern features, beady eyes, tidy mustache, and refined southern accent. Really? In the street? You're treating the First Lady of Ottentail like a common harlot. Painter puts his brush down on the easel. I don't have a studio, Ottertail. Druce pulls his wife to his side. Well, you need to get one, you disgusting Yankee vagabond. Until you do, stay away from Opal. Who ever heard of a one-eyed painter? And in the future, the name's Ottentail. And you'll address me by my title. Yes, Mayor. Druce's pallid features burn crimson. He takes a threatening step toward Painter, but is pulled back by Sigh. Van positions himself between them. I never seen two men who can get each other's goat more than you two. Look around you, Mayor. Look at the banners, the balloons, and the stalls selling cards and buttons with your name and face on them, celebrating your birthday. You don't want to spoil all this by picking a fight with Painter. It's about time my husband was feted, don't you think? Opal beams as Druce pulls her away. Yes, ma'am. Van replies, giving Sigh a queer side glance. She just say something about the mayor smellin' bad? Van asks. 6 men on horseback trot past. The burly lead rider locks eyes with Sigh. That's Jack Aker. I'd say our peaceful celebration just went to seed, Van comments. Cha. Aker and his gang tie their horses up at the Wildweed Saloon. Jack Aker takes a long, scornful look at Sigh and Van before joining the rest of the gang inside. Born in Massachusetts, the Aker brothers served in the Union Army during the war. Afterward, they were guards for the Northeastern Railway, until they realized that robbing trains was easier and more profitable than guarding them. Wearing a perpetual frown across his sunburnt features, 44-year-old Jack Aker is crafty and murderous. Unlike his brothers, Jack is educated and prefers swindling to shooting. A ladies' man before the war, 37-year-old Lon Aker is sensitive about the angry red scar that runs from his forehead to his chin. 30-year-old Boston Belly Aker is an imposing 6'6" and unafraid to use his size to get what he wants. Riding with the Akers are their scruffy 17-year-old cousins, Les and Stanley Tremaine, who have fallen in love with the outlaw life. Them hard cases is here for one thing, skullduggery, Van says. 6 again 2. The odds ain't stacked in our favor. Maybe we can reduce them and nip this situation in the bud. That tall dandy in the black duster and the stovepipe hat, that's Cack Bruder. He's wanted for killing a man in Stiffgate that he claimed dealt from the bottom. Let's send him back there. Drawing his gun, Sigh confronts Bruder at the faro table. Party's over. You've got a hanging to attend. Yours. The Tremaine brothers brandish Bowie knives. Van swings the shotgun in their direction. Really, children? Behave, boys, Jack says. Belly. Aker slowly rises. You gotta go through me to get him. Van points the shotgun at Belly. This'll go through you faster'n spoiled milk. Jack pulls his brother back into his chair. Turn your steam down, Boston. You shouldn't treat visitors who've come here to spend their money and join your celebration like this, Marshall. Is that why you're here, Jack? Cy asks. It's not to rob the bank, steal some strumpet's pay, or gun somebody? No, and maybe. Jack replies, smirking. Well, there's going to be one less of you to do it, Cy replies. Come on, Cac. Bruder raises his hands. You gonna help me out, Jack? We know a Jim Dandy lawyer in Stiffgate, Jack replies. Don't worry, Cac, Lon adds. If we can't free you legally, we'll blast you out as soon as we're through here. But don't worry. Any witness to your shootin' who gets a good look at Belly's gonna forget what he saw. Cy motions Cac toward the door. You're starting out on the wrong foot, Marshal. I was about to say the same thing, Jack. Lon turns to Jack as Cac is led away. We just lost our best shooter. That doesn't change what we came here to do. Van picks at his teeth with a toothpick. That was what you call a gourmet lunch. We ought to do that more often. As often as my wallet can take, Deputy. Tilting his head, Van asks, what in tarnation is that noise? Sounds like a drum beat. But the parade's not till later, Cy answers. The pair follow the sound, which leads them to the town hall. Painter is marching back and forth in front of the building, banging on an old drum. Druce exits the building. Shaking his fist at Painter, he rushes to the lawmen's side. Arrest him! Cy scratches his head. For what? Bad rhythm? Disturbing the peace. He's a menace. Since when did a drum become a dangerous weapon? Van questions. Just tell him to vamoose. I'm trying to close a deal to bring the railroad here, but he's ruining my chance. You mean our chance, right, Mayor? Cy asks. Do your job, or you'll be looking for another one. Druce huffs, retreating inside. Van whistles. Guess some folks is still fightin' the war. Later that afternoon, Painter is plying his craft outside the Wild Weed Saloon. Try not to squirm, Pearl, Painter says to his subject. Why? This ain't no photograph. Painter looks at Pearl, then back at his painting, hoping the tough cook will be happy to see herself without the pockmarks and missing teeth that mar her coarse appearance. Passing by, Druce glances at the portrait, muttering, ugly as a mud fence. You say something, Your Majesty? Pearl asks, making a fist. Just how lovely you look. I can't believe they's holding a celebration for you, you four-flusher, Pearl says. Sounds like she knows you well. Painter comments. Several townspeople gather around the portrait to gawk at it as Pearl raises her voice. My husband, Maitland, rest his soul, fought off the Apaches to help bring this town into being. He don't get no parade, no fireworks, no banners. All you done, Druce, is claim his accomplishments for your own, while keeping your hand in the town's treasury till. The spectators glare at Druce, who smiles sheepishly. Jack and Lon join the crowd, throwing their arms around Druce. Howdy, Mayor, Jack says, smirking. Yeah, remember us? Lon asks, running his finger down his scar. Druce breaks away from them, bumping into Cy. These scallywags are causing trouble, he gasps. We're just two slightly lubricated visitors, admiring the work of an artiste, Lon comments. Druce backs further away, his unblinking stare still riveted on the acres. You know those two yahoos? Cy asks. Yes, They know me, and I know what they want to do to me. You have to get them out of town before they kill me. He's been sampling the spiked punch, Lon says. They haven't done anything, Sai notes. Not yet. When they do, my death will be on you, Marshal, Druce shouts, hurrying off. Dramatic, ain't he? Lon comments. The following morning, Druce bursts through the jail's door, shoving a piece of paper in Sai's face. What's the meaning of this? Sai gives the page a cursory glance, passing it on to Van. Looks like a wanted poster with your name on it. Something you're not telling us, Mayor. Did you read it? Yep. It says you're a war criminal. The drawing is a nice likeness of you, too. I'm not a war criminal. Well, somebody thinks you are. There's a dozen of them posted up and down Main Street. My birthday celebration, my name, my reputation are in question. Sai narrows his gaze. Just what did you do during the war, Mayor? Druce clears his throat. I was behind the lines. He had it easy while Yoon and me was taking pot shots at each other. Van jokes. It was never easy. The filth, the rats, the lack of supplies. Watching Natchez burn. You was stationed in Natchez? Van asks. I ran the prisoner of war camp there. Van clenches his fists, his breath exiting in fitful bursts. You sick son of a gun. You took pleasure out of starving and torturing soldiers. The Yankees took their anger out on us because of the way you mistreated their men. You're a disgrace to the uniform of the Confederate States Army. You murderin' cur. Why don't you go take down the fake wanted posters, Van? Sai suggests. Why? They're true. Git. Van spits at Druce's feet, storming out. He fought on your side, Druce. I can't imagine how the Union prisoners feel about you. What went on in that camp? We had no water supply, no food, unsanitary conditions, and 20,000 prisoners. Most of them died from scurvy and dysentery. In the summer, we lost 100 a day to the heat. When one man died, another took his rotting rags. The prisoners were always trying to escape, so we had to resort to extreme methods. Anyone who got too close to the fence was shot. The boys, the drummer boys, they weren't going to survive anyway. So, you murdered them? I don't expect you to understand, Sai. It was war. When the armistice was signed, I was tried for war crimes and acquitted. Jack and Lon Aker were two of the prisoners who attended the trial. They swore vengeance, that I'd pay someday, and they are here to collect. Standing at the side of the podium, Sai elbows Van, pointing at the Aker gang. The gang has gathered near the front of the podium, so Druce can see their taunting smiles. Druce pecks Opal on the cheek. Shuffling papers, he begins his speech. The war against the states was hell, he says, looking at Jack and Lon Aker. Each of us lucky to survive left a piece of us behind on some battlefield, some hospital, or some prison, Jack shouts. I still wake up in a cold sweat at nights, yelling the names of the Union soldiers I had to kill. You mean murder? Jack grumbles. He doesn't have nightmares. He gave them to us, Lon adds. An eerie silence permeates as the crowd waits for a stunned Druce to to respond. The crowd jumps, then laughs as a succession of firecrackers explode near the stand. Druce cringes behind the podium. Realizing he's unharmed, he slowly rises, grinning nervously. Opal lies on the floor next to him, writhing in pain. "Cha, who would want to hurt my wife?" Druce asks. "Not Opal?" "You?" Sai grimly declares. "She was lucky, though. The bullet passed right through her arm. You think they were aiming for me, after what you told me?" "Yep." We found a rifle across the street in a second-floor room of the hotel. It's a standard Henry rifle used by soldiers. It could be owned by any one of us, including the Akers. I remember seeing Aker and his boys. They were standing in front of us, Druce says. "Looks like you got more enemies than we thought, Mayor." "Chan." That evening, Druce sways as he sits atop the bar, his storytelling embellished by the strength of the liquor he's been drinking for the past several hours. It's about time the mayor ran out of yarns and out of steam, Van says. "I'm tired of babysitting this blatherskite and having to stick him like a leech." Sai scans the room. It's the last night of his celebration. He's going to suck as much flavor out of the moment as he can. I just wish he'd picked a less public place to do it in. And we had those bluebellies trapped in the valley. It was a turkey shoot. The doors swing open. Jack Aker and his gang saunter in. Jack acknowledges Painter with a nod, quickly moving on. The Tremaine brothers thread through the crowd, moving to Druce's right side, while the Aker brothers gather left of the mayor. I could hear Dixie coming from the band. "How could you hear it above the screams of the prisoners you tortured?" Lon asks. "Oh, he could, brother," Jack says. "Because they don't write songs about cowards." Toodle-oo, Mayor, a gunshot echoes throughout the barroom. A bullet buries itself in the pillar next to Druce's head. Sai pushes Druce off the bar. Druce falls behind it, curling up underneath it, out of everyone's sight. Sai notices that none of the Akers have drawn their weapons. Growling like a mad beast, Belly swats everyone in his path aside. Grabbing Sai, he puts him in a bear hug, crushing him. "Let me go, Belly." "Sure, when you're dead." Reaching for his gun, Sai jams it between them, firing 3 shots. Belly releases him. Backing away, he laughs at the blood spurting from his chest as he falls face first. Jack and Lon reach for their guns. Lon fires at Sai. His 2 bullets strike Le Tremaine, killing him as he runs in front of Sai in an attempt to escape. Stanley Tremaine reaches for his Bowie knife, intent on throwing it at Sai, but a sea of panicking customers knocks the blade from his hand, and he's pushed out the back door. He doesn't return. Sai fires 2 shots at Lon, who drops his gun, falling backward. Hiding behind a pillar, Jack hits Van on the forearm with a slug from his Colt. Cradling his shotgun, Van returns fire, splintering the pillar. A second blast blows a now exposed Jack off his feet. Druce greets Sai on the street the next morning. They watch a crew of men pulling down banners and sweeping up the celebration's confetti. How's Acre? Gut shot, and about ready to join his brothers in the mortuary. I'm going to Doc's office to see him now. I hate to owe a Yankee, but thank you, Marshall. It's nice not to have to look over my shoulder anymore. I'm so happy. I think I'll have that reprobate painter paint my portrait. Toodle-oo. Peh. Jack grabs Cy's hand as the pain sears through his body. You know what I regret most? That a Reb finished me. You carried the pain of being in Ottentail's prison for 10 years. Why try to kill Druce now, Jack? We were paid to create a ruckus during the mayor's speech. The man who hired us decided he was going to kill Ottentail. He shot Ottentail's wife by mistake. Then he wanted to kill Ottentail while he was drunk in the saloon. He missed again. Everybody, including you, thought me or one of my brothers had pulled the trigger, so Belly decided to act first. He should have left the killing to us. Who hired you? Jack wheezes heavily. A broken man. He was a prisoner with Lon and me in Natchez. He was a clean-cut, handsome kid, a drummer boy during the war, never even shot a gun. I almost didn't recognize him when he rode into our camp last year, all thin and grizzled. Ottentail had made an example of him, whipped him, stuck a hot poker in his eye, and left him for dead. The Rebs buried him alive outside of the camp. He dug his way out and crawled back to the Union line. The loud report of a shotgun blast sounds in the street. Opal's scream sends Cy scrambling to the window. Help! Painter just shot my husband. So today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.